Have you ever wondered what happens when a quiet, seemingly weak person, often overlooked or bullied, turns out to be stronger than everyone expects? Well, this story is about a young boy, someone who was constantly bullied, mocked, and belittled at school. A boy who everyone thought was just another easy target for the school bullies. But what they didn't know was that this boy wasn't as defenseless as they assumed. He wasn't weak, and he wasn't going to let them push him around any longer. He was trained to be tough, and when the moment came, he showed everyone just what he was capable of. Let me take you back to a typical day at school. Picture it, a large, bustling high school, filled with cliques, bullies, and those trying to find their way in the chaotic world of teenage angst. In this world, there's one boy that everyone loves to pick on. He's a big kid, overweight, and doesn't fit in with the typical crowd. His name is Jamal. He's the type of kid you might expect to get picked last in gym class, the one who is often the target of cruel jokes, taunts, and the classic schoolyard bullying. But Jamal wasn't the kind of kid who was just going to cry about it. He didn't try to make friends with the bullies, and he didn't try to escape his tormentors by running away. In fact, he stayed calm, collected, and mostly kept to himself. Most people assumed he didn't have the strength, physically or mentally, to stand up for himself. After all, with his size and demeanor, he looked like an easy target. But what they didn't know was that Jamal had been secretly preparing for this moment for years. The bullies at school, a group of tough-looking kids who liked to assert their dominance over others, had been picking on Jamal for months. They'd call him names like fatty or pig and laugh as they shoved him in the hallways. They would make fun of the way he walked, the way he dressed, the way he talked, and they would find every excuse to make his life miserable. Every day, Jamal would sit in class, trying to keep his head down, hoping that the bell would ring so he could escape the torment for a little while. At first, Jamal felt the sting of the insults. They hurt him deep down. But something began to change inside him. Jamal had a secret. You see, while the other kids were spending their afternoons playing video games or hanging out with friends, Jamal was training. He wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for himself. He wasn't waiting for someone else to come to his rescue. No, Jamal was taking matters into his own hands. For the past year, Jamal had been secretly taking martial arts classes. His uncle, a former military man, had taught him the basics of self-defense. He had enrolled in a local gym where he learned Brazilian jiu-jitsu and kickboxing. He wasn't training to be a fighter for the sake of proving something to others. He was training because he knew, deep down, that if he was ever going to stop the bullies from making his life miserable, he had to be strong enough to defend himself. Jamal wasn't just training physically, he was also strengthening his mind. His uncle had always told him, "A strong mind makes a strong body." Jamal took this advice seriously. He started meditating, reading self-help books, and learning about mental toughness. He learned how to control his anger, how to stay calm in stressful situations, and how to use his energy wisely. His time in the gym had built not only his muscles, but his confidence too. The bullies, oblivious to all of this, continued to target Jamal. They thought they could continue their usual routine, call him names, make jokes at his expense, and humiliate him in front of others. But what they didn't realize was that Jamal was changing. The boy they had once seen as an easy target was slowly becoming someone they would no longer be able to push around. One day, during lunch, the bullies decided to take things a step further. They cornered Jamal in the cafeteria, mocking him as usual. This time, however, something felt different. Jamal stood up, looked the bully straight in the eyes, and calmly told him to leave him alone. The bully, not used to Jamal standing up for himself, laughed and pushed him back. But Jamal didn't flinch. Instead, with a sudden burst of confidence, Jamal sidestepped the bully's shove and used his training to quickly and skillfully take the bully down to the ground. It all happened so fast that the other kids barely had time to react. The bully was left on the ground, surprised and humiliated. Jamal didn't even look at him. He simply turned and walked away, his head held high. The cafeteria went silent for a moment, as everyone processed what had just happened. The bullies, who had once ruled the school with their cruel behavior, were now the ones who were speechless. Jamal had shown them that he was not to be underestimated. Word of what happened spread like wildfire through the school. The bullies, who had once terrorized Jamal, now avoided him at all costs. They didn't know what to make of him. Was he dangerous? Was he crazy? What if he could do worse than just taking down one bully? Over time, Jamal earned the respect of many of the other students. His quiet confidence and strength became an inspiration to others who had been too scared to stand up for themselves. He had transformed from the kid who was always picked on into someone who commanded respect. Jamal didn't have to prove anything to anyone. His actions spoke for themselves. But even though Jamal had earned respect, he never let it get to his head. He knew that bullying wasn't about strength or size, it was about power. And he was determined not to let that power corrupt him. Instead of becoming a bully himself, Jamal became someone who helped others. He started standing up for the kids who were still getting picked on. He'd walk into the cafeteria, see a student being harassed, and step in to stop it. He'd offer a kind word to the kids who were too afraid to speak up for themselves. Jamal's story became a legend at his school. The once quiet bullied kid was now seen as a hero. He wasn't the loudest or the most popular student, but he had something far more powerful, the ability to inspire others through his actions. He didn't need to brag about what he had done or boast about how tough he had become. He let his character do all the talking. Years later, when Jamal graduated, he left behind a legacy that would never be forgotten. His classmates, many of whom had once mocked him, looked at him with a newfound respect. They knew that Jamal had been through something most of them could never understand. He had faced adversity, he had been beaten down, but he had never given up. And that made him stronger than anyone could have imagined. So, what's the takeaway from Jamal's story? It's simple. Don't judge someone based on what you see on the outside. You never know what someone is going through or what they're capable of. The world has a way of testing us, and sometimes those who seem the weakest are the ones who come out on top. Jamal proved that being tough isn't just about physical strength. It's about mental resilience, determination, and never giving up, no matter what. And to all the kids out there who feel like they're not strong enough or brave enough to stand up to bullies, take a page from Jamal's book. You are stronger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Because when you least expect it, you might just surprise the world with what you're capable of.